Peace. Welcome everybody. Sky Blackwell, Eternal Authenticity. I'm out here sitting down at the park, just saying what's up, welcome. I don't have my phone stand, so I'm not about to be trying to hold the phone. But yeah, you know, Sky Blackwell, Eternal Authenticity, good vibes, low stress. That's the word I'm preaching today. Good vibes, low stress. Sky Blackwell, Eternal Authenticity. Yes, I know there's a lot of drama in the world, a lot of noise, a lot of drama in the world, a lot of tension, a lot of chaos is happening in the world. You know, a lot of dysfunction. There's a lot of dysfunction that's happening, maybe in your environment, maybe, you know, whatever, at school or at work, in your neighborhood. I already know I can speak on that. Bad vibes in a dark neighborhood, where it's just like always these problems, always, this chaos, you know, clashes, lots of disharmony. But regardless, through the thick and the thin, we got to maintain good vibes. That's my message. That's my point. We got to make sure we have good vibes, despite whatever we're going through. Minimize the stress, minimize your stress levels because stress causes sickness. Stress causes cancer, stress causes sickness. And right now I'm speaking, it's Monday when I'm doing this live video, Sky Blackwell, Eternal Authenticity. And a lot of people are stressed. A lot of people are very stressed. They're going to a job that they hate. They're going to work, going to a job, a 9 to 5 that they're unhappy with, you know, and that's why a lot of the world is very stressed because people are on a hamster wheel, whether it's going to a job, some people they're selling out in different ways, and it's just always to try to keep up with trying to have money or keep up with the Joneses or, people they want fame and fortune and lots of attention and whatnot. But you don't have to stress yourself out. You can still keep your integrity, keep your morals, keep your dignity, keep your self-respect and just minimize the stress, relax more. We're supposed to be relaxing more. Yes, we're supposed to be productive and get, work done, but also make sure you're relaxing. Make sure your spirit is at peace, make sure you take time to meditate, make time to pray, conscious prayer where there's no noise, no distractions, no noise, and you're just able to connect with God, connect with the earth, connect with the elements, and just start your day off right and live your day on a positive vibe, throughout the day, at nighttime, during the day, just in general. We have to eliminate stress. We have to minimize stress because stress causes sickness. A lot of times people get sick, they're irritable, they're grumpy because they're stressed out. People have children, people have family issues, relationship issues, issues at school or at a job or with business or even at, like I said, in your neighborhood or community. There's a lot of times a lot of noise, a lot of stress, a lot of tension, a lot of challenges and problems. That's part of life. But we can handle life with just a low stress mentality. That's my point. We can handle life with a good attitude. We can still accomplish tasks. We can still remain productive. We can still put in great work while having fun, while having a good, positive, happy attitude. Hey, welcome, welcome, Noah. Thank you, Sam Spencer. Thank you, Sam Spencer. Thank you, Backle. Much love to y'all. I'm sending y'all positive vibes. It's Monday morning. Yes, low stress, good vibes is the way to go. Like there's always so much negativity, so much hate, so much warfare, so many, deaths and tragedies going on in the world. And I know it's not always sunshine and rainbows. I know there's hard times, but at the same time, our life gets we have a better attitude. That's my point. It's on us. Like we can't just always be feeling like a victim, always trying to complain, always trying to start arguments, always looking for problems, looking for drama, looking, to stir up something. Like no, like you look at nature and the squirrels, the rabbits, the birds, the bobcats, the fish, they're just chilling. You know what I'm saying? They're chilling, living their natural life. And that's what I'm saying about us in general as humans. Practice good vibes. You know what I'm saying? Listen to good music with a message, you know what I'm saying? With a positive message that inspires you to do better. It doesn't matter even if there's like a lot of distractions. There may be a lot of illusions, a lot of deception, a lot of distractions where it's like, you know, it just makes you want to be negative because they're just saying a negative message and it brings you down, it makes you feel bad. But instead, you got to shine as a light, be a beacon of positive light, be a peaceful energy. And yeah, I know we're all dealing with stuff. We're all overcoming different problems, different hardships. But if we can just work on feeling better internally, taking care of our rest, our sleep, making sure we're staying hydrated, we're drinking our water, clean spring water, we're getting time in the sunshine, time for a fresh air, going for a walk, going for a run, playing a sport, volleyball, basketball, tennis, swimming, surfboarding, something like that. That's something that's going to lower our stress level so we can live a healthier life. We live a higher quality of life, one, by having low stress levels, two, by just living a holistically healthy, balanced lifestyle, with a clean diet, fruits, vegetables, fasting, nuts, good music, and just minimizing the arguments, minimizing all the drama, minimizing all of the, unnecessary baffling with others. You know what I mean? Cutting off the television. You know what I mean? Not always being stimulated on the TV. That's what helps out our nervous system. Instead of just always being caught up watching some negative stuff on the news, that's going to make you stressed out. That's going to make you fearful and sad and lower your vibe. But when you immerse yourself in more natural environments, when you detach from the devices, when you cut off the noises, all these airplanes, noisy televisions, noisy radios, noisy, just being in the concrete jungle in the streets, when you just literally prioritize your mental health, life gets better. That's my point. Life gets better when we take care of our internal condition, you know, and I can speak on this because I've seen the positive changes within myself of preventing stress. Yes, there's going to be some stress in life in the world, you know, because it's about different waves. Like it's like an ocean. Life is like an ocean, and it's how we ride it, how we surf. How is our attitude? How is our mentality when we're living our life experience? You know what I mean? And we can have fun when we have low stress. You know what I'm saying? When we choose to have a more positive attitude, when we choose to live a pure life, when we choose to be obedient, life gets better, So cutting out the unnecessary stress, like I said, it could be toxic friends. You might have had to let go of people who are not meant to be in your life. They could be bringing out a bad side of you because they need to work on themselves. They may be very sick, they may be very empty, and they may be like just draining your energy. People may be draining your energy. It could be family members, friends, work colleagues, coworkers, people at school, and it's like you got to stop stressing over these people and just protect your energy. You know what I mean? Protect your energy and just, be to yourself or wait for better people to come. Wait for God to send better people to come. So sometimes being in isolation is a blessing, because you're able to just prioritize your happiness. You're able to be alone and mind your own business, and you're able to recharge your energy without all this unnecessary stress, other people's problems. People, they aren't even paying you, and they just want to try to dump all their problems onto you. They want to try to drain your energy and try to get all this love from you, but they're not even pouring back into you in any type of way. They may not even be giving you no money or no type of positive compliments back. And that's why I've noticed along my journey, I had to cut off a lot of people they're not pouring back into me. I was just always just giving, giving, giving to them, and they were not giving me nothing because their life is out of order. They're living a unbalanced life, and many people are lost. So it's like they're pulling you down, they're pulling your energy, they're sucking your love, your time away from you, you know, and that adds to stress. Like, why would you want to be around people that's just sitting around gossiping, gossiping, trying to argue, always just so disagreeable? You know what I mean? Like, I understand you don't have to agree on every last thing, but like, people that's very argumentative argumentative, and they love being so disagreeable. you know that's honestly toxic. You know what I'm saying? Because of course you don't want to be around a person that's just a pushover, like a yes person. You want to be around someone that has a backbone, but at the same time you don't want to be around someone that's just always trying to debate, always trying to argue, always trying to debate, always trying to start drama. And it's not healthy. You know what I'm saying? Because the vibes are important, for our sanity, for our peace of mind, for our health, our wellness. Our vibes are key. Sky Blackwell, Eternal Authenticity. Click the like button, like this video. I'm doing a live stream message out here in nature Monday morning. And yeah, like, just as simple, like me being out here with the birds, listen to the birds sing is very peaceful, it's very relaxing. There's uh elderly people out here, elderly women, honestly, they're out here taking a seat, sitting down, chilling, you know what I'm saying? And that's a peaceful thing to do. That's what I want my mom doing, and that's what I want my wife doing whenever she gets older, when we get way older, and just throughout life. It's just a good thing, to minimize the stress instead of being, trying to watch TV or scroll on a computer. Go for a walk, sit at the park. You could feed the birds. You could feed the birds some bread or some snacks or something like that, you know and just count your blessings. Count your blessings and get that sunshine. The sunshine is key, and it's very relaxing. It's very therapeutic. Even just talking with a truly good friend, someone that's positive, someone who has your back. They're rooting for you. They're cheering for you. That's a positive interaction you want to have, where they bring out the good side within you. They see the best in you. They wish you well, and that's the person you want to be around. Not caught up in unnecessary stresses. Where you're always, being picked apart, or you're worrying about stuff, worrying about, you know, different things. You could be overthinking about a lot of different problems or circumstances, or, you could have a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of confusion. But you got to know that we have to vibrate higher, on a higher frequency, and choose love, choose peace, and choose to eliminate the stress. It's a feeling within your body. Like, yeah, I know we can work out, we can lift weights, and we're, stressing the muscles so the muscles get bigger and stronger. Cool. That's natural part of life. But at the same time, you don't want to be over stressing in life. I'm talking about road rage. You're pissed off, you're driving recklessly, or you're drinking, you're taking drugs, or you're out here getting violent, starting war, starting drama, breaking stuff, you know, clouding your mind with a lot of negativity, and, making your nervous system do bad, get sick. That's what stress does. It's an internal feeling, it's an internal energy that you have to be conscious to say, hey, I'm not gonna be stressing out. I'm worthy to live a peaceful life. I'm worthy to live with joy. I'm worthy to live a healthy, harmonious life. Yeah, there may be some ups and downs, but my attitude determines how far I'll go. Most people, they don't go far because they just have a bad attitude. But if we have, hey, a low stress mentality, a positive attitude, life is going to be better for us. You know what I mean? Life is going to be better for us. We're going to be healthier. We're going to live a higher quality of life and live a longer life that's happier. That's why I study from a lot of the elderly people that's 100 years old or older than 100 years old. One big key of wisdom that they said is low stress. They all said that. People that's 100 years old, they all said the same thing about, hey, low stress levels is how you live a higher quality, longer life, you know, more peace, more stability. The reason why people they crashing out, they're sick, they're grumpy, they're angry, they have no energy, they're tired, is because people are stressing out over worried about, what people think of them, or what people will say, or you know how people view them, or they may be stressing out over the past, stuff that already happened, a long time ago. And you have to make peace with today, make peace with yourself now, and become better. Don't go backwards, don't keep doing the same mistakes. But when we can truly say, hey, I'm moving forward with the fresh start, I'm gonna prioritize my happiness. I'm going to choose to minimize the stress that's in my life. I'm going to really guard the gates of my mind. I'm going to guard my heart, and I'm going to make sure that I'm nurturing myself with life. I'm giving myself life. I'm giving myself good vibes. I'm feeding myself tranquil, fertile energy. You know what I mean? I'm not going to be caught up with chemicals and poison and pollution and noise and chaos. You know what I mean? So it's all a response within ourselves, you know, to just say, hey, I'm gonna cut out the stresses. Stress makes people sick. Like I said, stress causes cancer, stress causes early deaths, stress causes extra problems, so we can still work out, we can still exercise, we can still run, we can still, you know, be productive and active. You know what I'm saying? We can still be active, but at the same time, it's like, how are we during this active time? We can consciously choose to minimize the stress. That's all I'm saying. You know what I mean? That will help the world become a better place. Is when when we become more in tune with ourselves. When we become more aware of our emotions, more aware of our feelings, more aware of our vibes, become more conscious of our aura that we're emitting, become more aware of how we're treating life, how we're interacting with people. I mean, that's a big part, a big key that people need to check themselves in the mirror. You know what I mean? Look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, how can I become better? How can I become more peaceful? How can I become more harmonious? You know, how can I show up in a more calm way? How can I relax more? How can I be more calm, while still living my life? And that's why I recommend also, like I said, sleep and resting, have your balance, your rhythm in sync. You know what I'm saying? Have a healthy routine. Me, I love 6 to 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours preferably. Last night I got a lot of good sleep, got 8 hours, about 9 hours of sleep. And I feel very recharged. I feel energized. I was up, went for my walk. It's in the morning time. A lot of people are still asleep. They're still watching TV. They're still in bed, or they may be rushing to work. They may be rushing to a job that they hate, and they have this bad energy. They're sad. They're depressed. They're anxious. They're grumpy. They're moody. And like they don't feel good. And a big part is sleep, resting. Because when we sleep, we actually detox our mind. You know, our mind, our brain actually goes through a detoxification journey when we're sleeping. You know, when we're going through that deep REM, rapid eye movement sleep, that's literally flushing out the toxins inside of our brain. You know what I mean? It's literally cleansing our mind. It's literally purifying our aura, you know, when we're sleeping, you know, when we're resting. That's how we're able to recharge. That's how we're able to recharge. That's how we're able to vibrate higher and live a lower stress life. You know, when we're able to recharge, sleep, rest, and have that positive, consistent cycle going. You know, where hey, I'm gonna be in bed, I'm gonna sleep when it's dark at nighttime, and I'm gonna wake up when the sun comes up. You know what I mean? We got to get in that balance, that routine of hey, you know, I'm not gonna be out all night drinking or partying or just hanging out, you know, wasting time. No, I'm gonna make sure that when it gets darker, when it gets later at night, I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna go to sleep. You know, I'm gonna sleep a good 6 to 8 hours, you know, so I can fully recharge, I can fully be healed, you know, overnight, and then wake up at sunrise. When the sun is rising, then we have a new burst of energy, a new energy channel, new, fresh, vibrant energy is coming into our life and our body, our mind, our soul, because it's all about cycles. You know, the sun, we rotating around the sun, cool. Now it's a new day. Now we have more energy because of the sunshine and because we slept, we rested well. You know, those are key important facts. And that's how you minimize the stress, reduce the stress, and you have better vibes, you know, by doing what you love, you know, feeding yourself life, positivity, nourishment, you know, thinking how you can grow, you know, treating yourself like a garden, you know, honoring yourself like a garden, like a temple. How are you going to take care of a garden? How are you going to take care of a temple? You know, are you going to put soda? Are you going to be destructive with the garden? You know, if you want to have watermelons and grapes and apples growing, you need to take care of your garden, you know, with rest, with sunshine, with clean, fertile soil, with air, with water, you know. The same thing with us. We have to take care of ourselves. You know, that's how we eliminate stress. That's how we live a better quality of life when we truly take care of ourselves. You know, when we truly say no to the nonsense, no to the foolishness, no to the games. You know, a lot of people are stressing out because they're chasing people. You know, I know what that's like. In my past, I was caught up, you know, chasing women, you know, going after these different women, you know, because I wanted to get married. And I still desire to get married, but I know it's going to happen naturally, you know, with the right woman that's meant for me. You know, I know I don't have to be stressing out trying to force things. I'm not going to be trying to force things. I'm not going to be trying to chase people and stuff like that. So that's why I have low stress levels. Most people, they're out here trying to force stuff and they're chasing stuff. They're chasing people and chasing things. And that's why many people are very stressed out because it's like it, they have to fill that void within themselves. You know, they always feel empty and it's like they're always trying to reach outside of themselves and really they're just going around in circles, you know. They're just going around in circles and it's like it's never enough, you know. But when you truly say, hey, I'm going to be at peace, that's when the magic happens, you know. Spirit, when the spirit is at peace, that's when things come together. But when we're always in our ego logical mind saying, hey, you know, I have to have this, I have to have that, you know, how it all has to be here right now, you know, I need it to happen fast. You know, that's when we get stressed out. That's when people get out of character and they start doing silly things, foolish things, because Many people are out of balance. But when you check yourself, you make sure you have a good balance within yourself and you're saying, hey, I'm whole, I'm complete, I'm going to be at peace. I'm going to allow my spirit to be at peace. I'm not going to be always trying to look outside of myself. I'm not going to be always trying to chase or force things or try to control stuff. I'm just going to be in my power, in my zone, minding my business, radiating positive vibes, being calm, being relaxed, being more neutral. That's how we lower our stress levels and that's how we improve our health, honestly, by getting our mind right. We got to get our mind right. We can't be all over the place, you know. We can't be all over the place. We can't be out here draining our energy, distracting ourselves, wasting precious time, So, yes, lower stress levels by taking care of your health. Lower your stress levels by nurturing yourself with truth, with care, you know, take good care of yourself. Some people they take better care of their dogs than they do of their own self, you know. They're pampering their pets, their animals more than they actually take care of their own human self. And that's the thing people got to look at. You know what I mean? That's the thing people got to look at. And same thing with me, like I take great care of myself. I'm naturally very passionate. I'm naturally very excited and, loving and fiery. But at the same time, I have to check myself, because sometimes maybe I've been frustrated, I've been angry, I've been mad, I've been angry, I've been frustrated or anxious about stuff. And I found myself stressed, I found myself stressing over little things, things that maybe it's not a big deal, or maybe things that's, it's already working itself out, stuff that may not even be a problem, but I might have been overthinking it, thinking the worst case scenario, stuff like that. Like that's more unnecessary stress is when we're over here ruminating, clouding our mind up with dark, heavy thoughts, overthinking stuff, creating worst case scenarios. That's what makes the vibes bad, and that's what makes people stress out. Because if you're always just looking for the negative, always looking for the worst, always looking for things to go wrong and for things to get bad, then that's what happens. Bad things happen, and like our mind stays stuck in a low frequency. But when we consciously choose to say, I'm gonna be realistic, but also I'm gonna be positive, I'm gonna minimize my stress, we develop a more harmonious energy within us. You know what I mean? And like I said, also it comes down to the nutrition, our diet. What are we intaking? What are we consuming? Every day, what are we consuming? Are we consuming life or are we consuming death? Are we consuming pain? Are we consuming pain? Or are we consuming nourishment? You know what I mean? And that goes across the board with what you're watching, what you're listening to, what you're reading, what you're, you know, drinking or eating. All this plays a part, a key factor in our day to day health and our well being. I'm a holistic health coach, you know, I'm a nutritionist, I'm a healer. So I know what has helped me to feel better. You know, I can't stress out about these noisy airplanes, you know, even though it's very annoying. And I'm ready to move. I'm ready to move far away from here. But at the same time, what can I do? Can I throw rocks at the plane? Can I holler at the plane and say, hey, be more quiet, airplane, go on somewhere else? No, I would be stressing myself out trying to argue and holler and scream all the time, about stuff that's out of my control. I know I can influence the world. I can speak up about stuff. I can move differently. I can, move to a new environment. But at the same time, little stuff like noisy airplanes, I can't stress about that. I have to come up with the solution to say, hey, I'm gonna move to a new, different environment where I'm not constantly by an airport hearing all these noisy airplanes. I'm gonna move to a smaller place, a smaller town, more quieter environment where it's set up differently, where it's not all this dysfunction. You know what I mean? So I'm always holding myself accountable. I've stressed out at jobs. One, because the jobs were making me unhappy and it was stressful just in general, being underpaid and not really appreciated. Yeah, that's natural at a job, but I've been overstressed at jobs, overstressed in relationships where, I was trying to make it work, trying so hard to be on the same page as a woman, and I ran into a lot of sour apples, a lot of bad apples where it was just toxic, where it's just, the click isn't there. And it's like I'm over here trying to save a connection that doesn't want to be saved, and that causes a lot of stress, like when you're trying to chase people, when you're trying to force things, when you're trying to change people, you can't do that, so detachment detachment helps out a whole lot. Detachment helps out a whole lot, you know, detaching from the system, detaching from, your old life or from friend circles or from the city, the concrete jungle, detaching from the popular crowd or whatever. Like that helps to lower stress levels, because you're not always constantly battling with other people's trauma and other people's baggage, other people's problems, and you get more clarity when you spend more time alone. You know, you develop more clarity when you spend time alone and you detach, detach from trying to chase people around, detach from, you know, wasting your energy, draining your energy. You know what I mean? So, um, yeah, a word to the wise is sufficient. You know what I'm saying? And we got to stay focused. We got to stay focused on making progress, on leveling up, upgrading our life, not trying to fit in a box, not trying to blend in, not trying to compete, but we got to truly just say, hey, it's me and God. I got to become better than who I was yesterday, you know, and that's a part of accountability. That's part of responsibility, you know, by us saying, how can I be better? How can I heal? How can I heal? Everybody has to heal. You know, I'm a herbalist. I'm a coach. I'm a nutritionist. I'm a transformation master, and I'm always healing. I'm always healing from traumas and hardships and stuff I need to heal from the past. With my nutrition, with my diet, with my choices, with where I was at, who I was involved with. We all have work to do. Nobody has a clean slate. We all have inner healing work to do. We all have development that we can act upon, what I'm saying, within ourselves. Nobody's excluded, nobody's excused, nobody's excluded. Everybody has work to do within themselves. We can't be pointing fingers. We can't be blaming other folks, blaming other people, pointing fingers. You know, because when you point the finger, there's fingers that's pointing back to you. So look at yourself in the mirror. How can I be happier? Ask yourself, how can I be happier? How can I be healthier? How can I be more calm? How can I be more relaxed? You know, how can I prevent so much stress taking over my life? You know what I mean? So Yes, life is gonna have its ups and downs, but like I said, it's like a bird. You know, these birds that's flying, these hawks, these eagles, these hawks, these crows, these different birds, they flying. You know, this sometimes it's real windy. You know, sometimes it's real rainy, real windy. You know, it could be a storm, it could be cold, whatever, different types of weather circumstances. But the birds, they still fly. You know, they still fly. They just have to maneuver in a smart way. You know, they have to make sure that they're flying correctly, you know, through the storm. You know, they're embracing the storm, the different wind, the different geography, the different climates. You know, they're making sure that, hey, I'm going to make sure that I'm not going to crash out, you know, and that's a big key. You know, Sky Blackwell, eternal authenticity. That's what God is reminding us. God is saying, hey, don't crash out. You know, I gave you this beautiful life. Who are you to try to crash out? Who are you to try to, you know, be starting all this drama and tension and, you know, bad energy? You know what I mean? We owe it. We owe it to Jesus. We owe it to God to really live a healthier, clean life. You know what I mean? So that's my message today, Sky Blackwell, eternal authenticity. You know, I'm out here vibing, feeling good. I appreciate those who came and joined today. It's been about 36, 37 minutes. And today, I guess it's Monday. I don't know. It seems like a lot of people have the Monday blues. It's kind of slow right now. So, whatever, you know. I'm going to conclude this video live stream. And yes, Sky Blackwell, Eternal Authenticity. Follow me on Instagram. Send me positive vibes. Like this video. Click the like button. And eliminate the stress. Feel better. You know, recharge. Recharge your energy. Heal your energy. You know, preserve your energy. Don't be out here trying to waste it and drain it and, you know, don't get pulled backwards. You know, don't get pulled backwards. Life is too beautiful to be stuck in a loop or stuck in a box, stuck in a cage. Life is too beautiful. God is too good to us. So we can't waste time with stressing out and, you know, going down the wrong path, you know, doing destructive stuff, doing stuff that's, you know, unnatural. You know, we got to make sure that we cultivate that inner peace. Make sure that we stay happy, we stay positive, you know, even when things may be slow, even when it seems like nothing is happening. You got to hold on. Hold on to the grace of God, you know, hold on to hope, hold on to faith, you know what I mean? And lower your stress levels. Take a chill pill, you know what I mean? Many people have to take a chill pill, you know, instead of resorting to violence, instead of resorting to drama and arguments. Take a chill pill, relax, do some yoga, you know, go for a bicycle ride, go for a hike, go hiking, you know, go surfing, you know, rest, take a nap. You know, many people, it's good, you're doing lots of work, you're productive, you're active, you're burning lots of calories, you know, you're communicating with people, cool. But also to prevent burnout, you got to take a nap, you got to rest, you got to recharge, you got to really say, hey, you know, I care about my internal vibration, I care about my internal condition, I care about my inner peace. You know, I'm going to nurture my heart with fruit, with righteous fruit, you know, with honorable, organic, clean, fresh fruit. You know, that's what we have to feed our soul, feed our spirit, feed our blood, you know, righteousness, you know, honorable energy, you know, not poison, you know. So that's my message. Sky Blackwell, eternal authenticity. It's been 40 minutes and I'm getting ready to conclude the message for real. Y'all can find me on my new YouTube videos every day. I'm uploading YouTube videos, Sky Blackwell, eternal authenticity on this one channel. And yes, I have a lot more I'm uploading, more music, more podcasts, more clothing, more ebooks. And I'm providing consultations for people. So click the like button, like this video, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next YouTube video. Sky Blackwell, Eternal Authenticity. I'm uploading YouTube videos every day. And I hope y'all have a lovely, happy, positive, peaceful day. Y'all stay blessed, and I'll see you in the next YouTube video.